All right, it's time to talk about San Diego Comic-Con. It's time to talk about the massive Marvel Hall H panel that went down this past weekend. Now, if you listened to our podcast last week, we made some predictions. We made about 18 predictions about potential announcements that we thought we were going to see at Marvel Studios' panel at Hall H this past weekend. Spoiler alert, we pretty much got everything wrong. They announced nearly nothing. It was a very interesting turn of events because they decided to take a completely different approach this time. And we sort of alluded to this on the episode, but I think it was even more dramatic than what we probably could have ever predicted. They literally only focused on the movies that are coming out next year. Kevin Feige got on stage and said, hey, we got to talk about 3 movies today. We're going to talk about Captain America Brave New World. We're going to talk about Thunderbolts. And we're going to talk about the Fantastic Four. Ultimately, that turned out to not be entirely true because it ended off with the Avengers announcements, the next 2 Avengers films. But really, just 5 films and 3 if we want to be completely specific about it in terms of what they actually highlighted without announcing anything else. No timeline, no visual that shows like phase 6, here's all of the release dates. I mean, it was a pretty clear departure from what they've done historically, at least from the past 2 Comic-Cons. This sort of reminded me of like Comic-Cons in the lead up to Avengers Infinity War. Like I remember that there was a panel, I think it was in 2017 when they were at Hall H, and it was pretty much just focused on a couple of things. It was focused on Thor Ragnarok. Captain Marvel was in early development at that time. They teased out some stuff for Infinity War, but it wasn't this grand plan. But yeah, in the past couple of appearances that they made, I think we're kind of used to just seeing a ton of announcements. So before we dive into like the specifics of what we heard about, what did you just think about that approach? Is that something that you liked, or do you wish that we actually heard more from Marvel Studios in terms of their future plans?
You know, we did talk about it is important for Marvel to focus on what they have going on right now and making what they have right now, I guess, doing the best that they could with what they got before announcing we don't need 20 more dates. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that's what we're looking for. But I think I did expect at least 1 or 2 more announcements of something, you know what I mean? Instead of, I think, kind of leaving us, I guess, kind of high and dry. And maybe, you know, the news that we'll get to in a second is they were just like, this is our one big thing. But even that, we expected 2 Avengers movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing new is still like on the table technically in terms of new movies or new whatever slates. It's like, oh, we knew these things were happening. We just didn't know what direction they were going in. And so I think that's interesting that it's like technically nothing, no new projects came out of it, or nothing. No new projects came out of it. So I think that's crazy. But also, I think on the flip side, there's also we talked about D23, in which they might just be saving some stuff for D23. Again, I think that's still more TV show side stuff to come there. But yeah, maybe they're just taking their time and being patient with it, and maybe next year, once they feel like they've returned to form or something, you know what I mean? Maybe after they feel like they've gotten off Captain America in maybe during the weekend of Fantastic Four, maybe they'll be like, okay, let's come back to return to Hall H with a little bit more to say. But maybe they're still gathering their thoughts, gathering everything that they need to, and are going to announce in smaller chunks. But yeah, I was, I think, a little surprised by, I don't know, maybe not 1 or 2 more announcements being had at Hall H.
Surprised and, to be honest, let down. I really wanted to hear a little bit more. I didn't expect the world. I didn't expect to come into this thinking like, yeah, we're going to get the next 20 movies for the next 15 years. By no means, and nor did I want that. I want them to learn from some of the mistakes that they've made, because oftentimes, as of late, past few years, we've seen all these release dates and then all sorts of shit happens. A global pandemic, dual strikes, all sorts of crazy stuff just goes down that completely throws it all in shambles. And so what is a release date even at this point? But it would have been nice, I think, to fill out phase 6, because I have a hard time believing that phase 6 is only going to consist of, at this point, 3 movies, 4 movies, if I'm not mistaken, like depending on where Blade falls into it. But maybe that is the case. I don't know. Maybe phase 6 is only just like the 3 biggest movies possible, and that's going to be Fantastic Four, 2 Avengers movies. They'll have the rest of the show sort of fill it out. But, you know, at the same time, I'm a movie guy, and these shows ain't been hitting. They haven't been doing what I want them to do. And so if we're relying heavily on the shows in phase 6, I'm worried about that. I don't think that
Mhm.
that's necessarily the way to go, but ultimately the phases themselves don't matter. The movies themselves, the final product that matters, and next year is going to be really integral in terms of just consistency. Can we see 3 movies come out back to back and all be really good? I'm hoping that that's the case between Cap 4, Thunderbolts, and the Fantastic Four. We'll have to ultimately see, but I was let down. I was let down because
Yeah.
it does feel like they're withholding something. I could be totally wrong, but it doesn't feel
Mhm.
like they've
I
given
agree.
us a little bit more, but we'll ultimately have to see over the next few weeks and maybe the next few months. But let's get into it. We're not going to bury the lead here. We're going to start off with just the biggest news that came out of Comic-Con in this panel. Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but not as Tony Stark, not as Iron Man. He is coming to play Victor Von Doom, and he will be making an appearance and starring in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Kevin Feige announced officially that the Russo brothers are indeed directing these movies. We talked a lot about that. I'm sure they wanted to save that announcement for Comic Con, but something got leaked. They will be back to direct Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. The two directors that are responsible for the biggest and in a lot of cases maybe the best movies in the MCU up until this point, between Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, ultimately grossing somewhere in the neighborhood of $6+ billion for the MCU. There's been a lot of reporting, a lot of chatter. We're going to open this conversation up in a second here, but I do want to read a couple of things. Sources close to the situation say that Robert Downey Jr. ultimately agreed to return to the MCU if the Russo brothers would be directing. He only wanted to work with them. They say, quote,
Mhm.
they were the only ones he would work with, says a source familiar with the deal making around the projects. Also, we do now have confirmation that Stephen McFeely will be back to write both Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. He co-wrote the scripts for the Captain America trilogy as well as Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. Christopher Marcus, his frequent writing partner, will not be back. We're not entirely sure what the case is. Hope he's doing okay. But Stephen
Right.
McFeely will be writing these movies, which ultimately confirms that Michael Waldron, who was long attached to these projects, is no longer writing the movie, which is a shame. Don't ever want to see somebody lose a job, but now Stephen McFeely will be stepping into it. And while the Russo brothers' previous 2 Avengers films both shot in Atlanta, the new outings will be filmed in London, and they're going to start filming in the second quarter of 2025, which is right around the corner, really, really soon here.
Close. Mhm.
Also, there's been a video that's been, sort of making the rounds once again. It's sort of a viral video, but last year Kevin Feige was doing an interview and he got asked some questions about previous movies, and he had let it slip that at one time Robert Downey Jr. was considered to play Doctor Doom in 2005's Fantastic
Yeah.
Four movie, but ultimately he lost that role out to Julian McMahon, who we know went on to play that role, and of course that worked out very well for Robert Downey Jr., who would go on to be Tony Stark. And this was all pre MCU days as well, right now. So just a shocker of an announcement. This is huge. This is the biggest thing that they obviously released this past weekend. In fact, the video that they published on their Instagram page, which revealed this news, it's already one of the top 10 most viewed videos in Instagram history. As I'm recording this
Wow.
right now, the video is sitting at 287 million views on Instagram. Again, top 10 most viewed all time. So everybody has seen this. Everybody has an opinion about it. We're going to talk about this in detail because there's just so many things to look at this from. But
Mhm.
first question, ultimately, how do you feel about this news? Do you think that this is a complete Hail Mary, an act of desperation, or on the flip side, do you think that this actually might be a stroke of creative genius?
So personally, how I feel about it is, of course, a very bittersweet, which I'm sure, I think a lot of Marvel fans, I think, are feeling that way. That this news may be, I think, bittersweet in a lot of different ways. And by the case of Marvel in general, I think Hail Mary is right, but I think there is a little sliver of something in there that could be creative genius, if that makes sense. But I think it's a Hail Mary first. I definitely think, like, let's go get our biggest players that we have. We already talked about this, but we got to get the shit that works. Robert Downey Jr. works. The Russo brothers work. McFeely works. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go get the things that work. And I think in that way, I can't be mad. You can't be mad at Marvel for that, and it's a smart thing to do. Hell yeah, these are probably going to be some of the biggest movies of all time ever. Let's make it make sense. And I think RDJ even felt that way too. Like, if I'm gonna come back, I need to be like, no, I got to be him again. And for that to happen, the Russos, I need them to make me feel like I'm him again on that screen as well. Because they did it a couple times. I need them to go ahead and run that thing back. So yeah, a lot of bittersweet personally, just because I think the sweet for me is I love to see RDJ back. That's like the biggest thing. Of course, love Robert Downey Jr. Perfect send off. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I think I go to the bitter a little bit. I don't think I'm mad that RDJ is back per se. I think I just again wanted something different by the direction of Doctor Doom and who was going to play him and the feel that Doctor Doom was going to have and all of those things. Because there's actually a ton of comic book implications on what they could do here, which I think actually makes sense from a story perspective and a comic booky perspective to make that work, to make Robert Downey Jr. be Doctor Doom. I think some of that stuff will check out and make sense. But I just was hoping they would go a different direction. And that's really it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the bittersweet, man. That's all I can really say.
I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way. So what's so interesting about this is that if you were inside Hall H when this went down, hysteria. It was probably the greatest moment ever. You could hear the pop, you could hear the roar. It's that meme, it's everything. It's a ridiculous, chaotic situation, and I would never like hold that over somebody's head like, oh, you fucking chill, you're just like happy to be there. Right. Like, no, of course. No. Who would expect to see Robert Downey Jr. in that moment? It's definitely an amazing moment. But when you zoom out on a macro level and then the internet becomes a thing and people chime in, I mean, everybody has talked to me about this. Like everybody I know, even people that don't traditionally talk about Marvel, they've been like, so RDJ is coming back as a villain? Like, what's happening here? Here's what I'll say. First of all, I did predict that we would get casting news. I certainly did not think that this was going to happen. This was not in the cards in terms of what I was thinking. It is interesting to note that this rumor has been floating around. This is not like out of the blue. Another scooper that I follow, Jeff Snyder, I've talked about him a few times on this podcast. He actually published a newsletter and took down the paywall and talked all about the situation. He's been sitting on this news for months. He knew about it in May and was actually going to have a meeting with Marvel and Disney about a couple of weeks ago to really try to confirm the validity of whether or not they were actually considering RDJ coming in to play this role. But meeting got rescheduled, canceled, whatever the case may be, probably because they knew like we're going to try to pull off this huge surprise at Comic-Con. We're not going to leak it in this way. So I think he lost out on that scoop. But I remember hearing this for the first time and thinking like, I'm not mad at that. But how are we going to do that? It's hard to even process. And I think ultimately that's just where a lot of people are, because this is just such a unique situation where Robert Downey Jr. was the face of the franchise for 11 years. Not a side player, not a supporting character, not a cameo machine who stepped in and out. He is the guy. And he was the guy from day one who started this whole thing. And he had the perfect ending, as perfect of an ending as any character or any actor could ever ask for. We think it's all good. We think it's goodbye. He's moving on. And now he's coming back to do something that is just completely left field and totally opposite. And for that decision alone, I'm kind of here for it, because it's something that nobody would have ever predicted or expected. It's completely left field. You're taking somebody who was viewed as being so heroic, who's now going to step up to the mantle and take on the challenge of being what, for all intents and purposes, is the biggest villain in Marvel Comics history, if we're being honest about it. So he's going to say, if I can pull this off, if I can do this and make this work, I'm the fucking GOAT. There's no conversation. Nothing can be said about him. He is the real Marvel Jesus. Like, that is literally going to be true at that point. Imagine that. Imagine the prospect of if RDJ can actually pull this off and make it work and be sinister and be scary and be a bigger bad than Thanos or whoever else you want to compare him to. That is rarefied air that, just from an ego perspective, can't blame him. I just can't blame him, bro. Like, if you got a chance to do this fresh off of an Academy Award win,
For
That's
sure.
really important. And,
For sure.
by the way, I think it's important to know too that when he stepped away a few years ago, I think a little bit of him still wanted to prove that he was a good actor, that he was still like capable
Mm,
at being a dramatic actor. And he had a couple of flops, Doolittle wasn't a thing, but he picked a really
mm,
good project to attach himself to, a Nolan movie. Oppenheimer becomes basically the second biggest movie of last year and wins him an Academy Award. He's now proven that he is an actor's actor. He didn't need to prove that. I think everybody knew it, but that is
yeah.
cementing the legacy. So now I can really have fun. I don't have to adhere to
Mm,
nothing. I can just like show my ass at this point and come back. All that being said, it is a fucking Hail Mary. There's no doubt in it. That
it's a
that that
Hail
is
Mary
that
for
is a
sure.
clear thing that, boy, we are struggling and we have to
Yeah.
do everything possible to get people excited about these movies, and we have to do it very fast. And what's the
Mhm.
fastest way we can do it? Announce this nigga now. Break the
Yep.
glass, fly him to
Yep.
Hall H, make this happen now. And I
Mhm.
don't think it's a coincidence that they did this, 4 days before filming Fantastic Four. As I said, he's going to be in that movie. He's going to appear in the post-credit scene. That's going to happen.
Oh
That'll be
yeah.
the first time that we see him. But
Yep.
considering the timeline, that's something else we got to talk about here. Avengers Doomsday is less than 2 years away. The movie comes out in May of 2026. And we have 3 movies next year, a bunch of animated shows that won't have nothing to do with any of this. How is this going to work, man? Is this too quick? How can we ramp up appropriately to make this feel like the event that it needs to feel like? Because it's very different than what we dealt with Thanos. And a
Mhm.
part of this is because we clearly see that there's a pivot. They're pivoting from Kane to Doctor Doom, last minute decision. How is this going to work with having less than 2 years of runway to get us to this movie?
Man, it's so crazy that this is so close. It is like blowing my mind how close this movie is. They got some shit to do. What I will say, in the original Secret Wars, let's just talk thinking about Secret Wars, a very comic book landscape here, right? Literally, like there was this big ass thing in the middle of Central Park, and everyone, all the superheroes are like, "What the hell is that thing? I'm gonna walk in there." To be honest, that's really fast. You know what I'm saying? Like you could do that and be like, "Oh, there's the movie." You know what I'm saying? Like, "Oh, what is that thing in the middle of Central Park?" And everyone's just drawn to it, and you keep cutting to different heroes, and they end up being drawn to it. And maybe that's not a terrible way of just kind of getting to it. You know, there are some of these characters that we spent time with that's like, maybe we don't have to ramp up. Maybe they just get drawn to this thing and now they're on Battle World all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not crazy, I think, as long as Fantastic Four is the movie that we think it is or that we need it to be. And I think that's the big thing here. I think Fantastic Four now has so much more pressure on it now more than ever that this movie has been announced. Like Fantastic Four has to be it.
And
You got to give us.
it shouldn't have that
It
pressure
shouldn't have to
though.
be. That pressure shouldn't be there. I absolutely agree. It should not be there. But that's what they did. That's what they just did. You can't tell me a Fantastic Four movie is going to come out and then announce Doom is coming out a year after that. It's like, well, shit. Now we know exactly what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? We know exactly what's going to go down. And so, yeah, it's going to be it's going to be an undertaking for them because I already know they're not going to be doing much in Captain America
No.
by way of this. That's not gonna Thunderbolts ain't gonna be talking about this for real, probably.
Well,
So
let me retort really quickly
mhm,
because I mean Captain America's been shot like 7 times, so who knows if this is real or not. But
that's true.
there were rumors that the idea that Sam was going to start to figure out how to reassemble the Avengers, I think was
Uh-huh.
discussed and was on the table at some point. But
Okay.
even more concretely than that, because that is just a rumor, what they also
Mhm.
did confirm is that the Thunderbolts will appear in Avengers Doomsday. They will be a part of that cast.
Okay.
I want to talk about the title a little bit later when we get to the movie, but
Yeah, we will.
maybe there's a way there. Like maybe there's just more to the movie than we're giving it credited for. And again, it's going to be
Yeah.
its own movie, but the fact that they've already confirmed and have identified like these characters are going to be a part of this massive crossover story,
Mm,
maybe intrinsically we've already sort of set that connective tissue in motion to make these things actually create this ramp up effect to get us to a place where it's like, oh yeah, we feel like we're appropriately getting to this Avengers movie in a proper way.
So maybe 2025 is just about to be, and it's funny because before I think everyone was undercutting those movies a little bit. Like we were undercutting Captain America,
For
we were
sure.
undercutting Thunderbolts, we were excited for Fantastic Four the whole time, but we were definitely undercutting these other movies. Now you gotta go see these hoes. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta. I think it's almost genius in a way. It's like they made us feel like we have to go see these movies. Of course, we already feel like that anyway. But now it's like, no, Doomsday is right there, and you confirmed the Thunderbolts are going to be in this movie. Maybe there's something important in the Thunderbolts that we have to see. So like, we'll end up going. Everybody end up going to see Thunderbolts, and maybe there's something there. But I think there will be more work being done in Avengers Doomsday itself than before.
Yeah, I agree.
Like that's I think it'll just be a long ass movie. It's probably gonna be 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? It's probably gonna be a 3 hour movie. We might as well gear up and think about it now. It's probably gonna be a 3 hour movie.
Get your Gatorade bottles ready, guys. Have the bottle sitting next to you, ready to go.
And get ready for some guest appearances. Get ready for some comic booky shit. Get ready for Kate Bishop to show up in Captain America. You know what I'm saying? Like, get ready for some of these people to maybe have to pop up real quick to be like, these are the pieces that we might need to put together. And I think that's it, man. I think next year just became an even more important year for what Doomsday is supposed to be. But other than that, I think Doomsday is just going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting as a movie itself.
Just might be a really intense fourth quarter for them. Like, we're like who was it? You know, the I think the 2017 or 2018 Warriors, like they just always fucking showed up in the fourth quarter. Like, by the way, we should probably win this game. Let's play now. I think we're now kind of in that territory.
Steph Curry they ain't got no choice.
Just shows,
got to go full Steph,
and just drop buckets from the heavens. You know, I think that's kind of like the place that we're at now, where every movie, even if it's something small, you know, will signal like, oh, by the way, in a year, in less than a year, in 6 months, this big massive movie is on the way. We're doing some small things to get us ready to that point. But the next thing I want to ask, you know, Doomsday is a new title, so they did pivot from the Kang Dynasty as we suspected. But Avengers Secret Wars was always the second movie, the movie that was going to end out the Multiverse Saga. We knew that 2 years ago when they confirmed it. And there have been a lot of conversations about their choice to, at that time, presumably make Kang the big bad as opposed to Doom, who is the big bad in that comic book story. And so my question is, if Secret Wars was always the end game to the Multiverse Saga, see what I did there, why not introduce or tease Doom earlier? Like, was that not ever the thinking, in your opinion? Did they really just not ever intend to have Doom be a part of this at all? And it was going to be strictly Kang? Or, I don't know, were they hoping for some sort of surprise who gotcha reveal moment where it's like, yeah, Kang is like the immediate big bad in the forefront, but actually in the background, Doom is the more larger apparent threat that we've been slowly building to, but you didn't really notice it. We just kind of, slid it in there. I mean, what do you think about that?
I definitely think it's a pivot. I definitely think I still think they were going with Kang. They announced Kang. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jonathan Majors is at the top. He was in everything. Like, I definitely think the plan was for it to still be Kang. But I definitely think they had to pivot. I think they said, okay, how can we speed up the timeline? I think they always knew they wanted Doom for sure. Even when Fantastic Four was announced, I think Doom was like, all right, Doom's on the table. Like, Doom is coming. But maybe that's after Kang. Like that's second to Kang. Maybe Kang, we gotta beat him first. We're gonna build up Doom, and then we're gonna do Doom. Yeah, I think that's really it. I think they were trying to, and I think now they're trying to figure out how can we shorten that window. Before we had Kang to think about this time. I don't think he was part of the plan. I don't think Doom was part of the idea of what was happening after Endgame yet. I think they did want to be patient with Doom in that way. I think they wanted to build him up the way that Thanos was built up. But now they don't have that luxury anymore. Now they don't have they couldn't just say, well, let's keep going with Kang. They couldn't do that no more. They couldn't just say we're gonna do Doom in 10 years from now. They don't have time anymore. Like, they just had to do the thing that they had to do. And yeah, I don't think he was part of the plan.
I mean, talk about hitting the red button. This is it's
they
really
hit the hell out of it.
It's really crazy when you just like take it all in and just like soak it in, just like where we're at and just like how we got here. Because in a lot of situations, I would blame the corporation, like, y'all really fucked the bed in this one, like y'all messed this whole thing up. But in actuality, this is not really on them. It's kind
It's
of
kind of Jonathan Major's
crazy.
fault, bro.
It's like, damn, Jonathan Majors just like changed all of this, and that's had such a ripple effect.
Jesus.
But
Uh,
what I will
mhm,
say is that I don't know if you remember this. There were conversations that they were talking about pivoting to Doom even before the verdict about Jonathan Majors came out, because let's not forget, Quantumania was not the greatest movie ever, and that's the first movie that we saw him in. In fact, a lot of people hate that movie. And in addition to that, a lot of people said, wait, he's the big threat? The guy that just got defeated by Ant-Man? Like, he's really going to be the next big bad? I don't buy it. And so there were already, allegedly, rumor says
mhm.
that there were already conversations that this was happening anyway. I also just want to throw it out there. I follow a lot of pundits, and I come across things and I hear certain things. And a couple of people I follow and hear from say that they've heard about this news, the Doom news specifically, not RDJ, but the Doom news specifically, since like late last year, like late
Mhm,
October, November. And if you remember, the
mhm,
verdict about Jonathan Majors didn't come out, I think, until early December, where they
mhm.
finally made the decision to sever ties. And so, what would you say to that? You know, just that idea that let's remove what Jonathan Majors did off of the table. Let's just act like that didn't happen, but purely based on the emotional response to a movie and the performance of a character could have ultimately influenced their decision to make this move. What would you say to that? That might have actually been the motivating factor, as opposed to a guy who just pretty much ended up in a really really bad tight situation.
Then, if that's the case, that's when I would start to question why haven't we've been revving up this nigga this whole time. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? Like that's when I would start to question why haven't we thrown in little glimpses of what Doom is or who he could be, or like getting the feel for what this is supposed to be up until this point. Why did we? Why did?
Well, they only
Yeah.
had
Why did
one
we?
movie this year. They didn't have like a full
Right.
schedule of projects to really even like
Yeah.
there wasn't, I don't know if there was really a moment to capitalize on it. Like if the negotiations and the
Hmm.
conversations didn't start until, let's say,
Hmm.
September, October of last year, what could they have done? Especially if you have to find an actor to also step
Yeah.
into that role, and you have to ultimately, when you identify who that might be, negotiate and
Hmm.
go through that process. Like that's a whole long thing, right? Like I don't even know if they had an opportunity just to, I guess be
Yeah.
fair to them, like if they even really had a chance to build up to it, because it doesn't sound like that this started years ago. At most, it
Right.
probably started maybe 8 or 9 months ago, and so
Hmm.
I don't know. They might have just been in a really tight predicament and a tight spot with the whole thing.
Yeah, but then at that point, it's like, dang, why are we doing this so fast? Y'all didn't push the movie back. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, y'all.
That's
I
also
mean,
fair
because
too. Like
y'all
the
have the
dates.
autonomy to do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Y'all can say, let's move the date. Then let's move it back. Let's get one or two more movies in there. You
Mm,
know, but they're not doing that. They're just like, nope, Doomsday
press
2026.
forward.
I was like, oh, press forward. So it's like, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like neck jerky in a way. It's like it's crazy. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's really interesting.
It's because Kevin Feige said, "Y'all got me to 2027, and then I'm out this bitch. I'm not fucking staying around." That's
Uh,
probably really why.
that
For
boy
me,
finna
he's like,
retire.
I'm out. Or Bob Iger's like, yeah, I definitely said I'm retiring in 2020. Like that's it for me. And so
Hmm.
we got to get this out, because I mean, let's just be real. I don't want to call anybody's questions in attention, but these executives get paid a lot of money for these things. Like when they come out and they perform, and I mean, there's all sorts of incentives to meet certain dates. That's the most that I'll say. But next thing, let's talk about Doom, bigger picture and potential future even after this. If they decide to go with the more traditional Victor Von Doom in the future, not
Hmm.
what we're doing obviously with RDJ, but if they try to revisit the character or do something that felt a little more akin to the comics, do you think that going this route and having RDJ play the character, especially within such a quick time frame, do you think that might ultimately cheapen the significance and the effect that the character could have in the long run? I like
Hmm.
it's almost as if, I don't know. I mean, if they just decided to say like, yeah, we're gonna quickly have Thanos come pop up in 2 movies, dispatch of him quickly, but we'll have
Yeah.
something bigger for him in the future, or I don't know, anything else. Maybe introducing a new band of X-Men for Avengers Secret Wars that we're just going to dispatch of, knowing that like, yeah, we have a bigger plan down the road. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's like a good equivalent. I'm just kind of throwing things out there, but ultimately, like, what do you think about that possible effect that might have if we decide to revisit him in the future?
Yeah, it will definitely, I think, cheapen the character significance. Depending on, yeah, it will, because we would have already had a whole Avengers film with him in it. I think it would be different if like this was happening in a smaller scale film. Like if, let's say this was like Fantastic Four 2 and RDJ was playing Doctor Doom, and let's say that the movie happens and he lost, and then we see a different Doom pop up, and that Doom had like 6-7 years of presence over the MCU. I think that that would not cheapen it. I'll be like, okay, you're still Doom. This is fire. Let's do this. But because we're going like straight to Secret Wars, hell yeah. I would be like, what's this dude doing here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why else do we need Victor Von Doom in that way? But yeah, I definitely think it would cheapen the character significance in the long run if they decided to be like, oh, here's the traditional Doom. Come on in. I definitely think I think so, and I think they know that, and I think they don't care because I think this is it. Like, I think this is the Doom we're getting.
That's probably right because I mean, let's just be real. You can't really go bigger than Robert Downey Jr. playing this character like that.
Can't.
And as you said, he will be headlining 2 Avengers films. Like this is as big as you can go. This is the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anything outside of this is going to be lesser than if they decide to bring him back and have him be a supporting villain or something in a Fantastic Four movie, or be a foe to, I don't know, X-Men or whatever. Or maybe we get a solo Doom movie with a new actor. Maybe that could be interesting because he is a very complex character and there's a lot of lore and mythology. But man, Robert Downey Jr. is going to take a big bite out of this apple. It's going to be really,
Yeah.
really hard unless somehow we magically turn Doom into Marvel's Joker, and it doesn't really matter. Like, if you're good and anybody steps up to the plate, it kind of doesn't really mean all that much, because you could have an incredible iconic performance like Heath Ledger come out, and then just fast forward a few years later, you could have a Joaquin Phoenix come out and also make a huge splash and a huge impression and create a new franchise. That might be asking for a lot because Marvel never leans that hard into their into their villains. All of their villains are sort of in service to their heroes, but yeah, it feels like that this is kind of it for them. They're pulling the trigger and they have no intention on returning here after this particular set of movies.
Niggas about to reboot.
No, honestly, I think that's a real thing. I think you almost have to do that. Like, that feels like that might be the only option at this point. If you go this big and if you go this route with such a huge villain, are we not just setting ourselves up for a reboot of some sorts? Even if it's a soft reboot, like, it doesn't have to be the hardest thing ever, but to bring back I guess a traditional Captain America or a new Iron Man or whoever the case may be, like, does it just mean that this is like, yeah, this is kind of the end really of this era of the MCU, and everything after this is going to be resetting everything?
Yeah, I think that's an okay way to go.
Especially with mutants on the table, that's a whole new thing, right?
That's a solid 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Of just Marveldom. You know what I'm saying? Being the biggest leading franchise, one of the biggest franchises in cinematic history, is just like, at what point do you start over, right? And we've always talked about this. Me and you on the podcast, we've always said like, Doom is kind of it. Like, after this, I mean, of course, there's other crazy, like, nerdy things you can do, but I feel like we're skipping it. We're skipping Kang. We're not doing Kang. You know what I'm saying? Kang was that stepping stone in between, and I would argue maybe Galactus is like another one in between.
And he's in Fantastic Four. Galactus.
And he's in Fantastic Four. So it's like we because Kang is no longer there, we have currently missed the step to get there, and this is the climax to me. At least Doom is my guy. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, because the mutant saga could be on the way, that's different. It's time for Magneto and Sentinels and all the Apocalypse should be the big bad to me. You know what I'm saying? You can make a fire Avengers X-Men movie with Apocalypse easy, with some crazy horsemen and all that. But that feels to me like a whole separate time of new heroes, of young Avengers and different X-Men. So yeah, I feel like they peak after this, and then you might have to reboot. Like you said, it could be soft, everybody don't got to be different. You know what I'm saying? You don't got to
Right.
go get a new cap. You know what I'm saying? You don't got to do that. But I definitely think this is like, all right, Doom reboot, because Secret Wars is it. Secret Wars is it.
It's the biggest crossover that they've really ever done. So yeah, I don't know where else you can go after this. They have, I mean, they've blown their load for sure.
Yeah.
The big conversation coming out of this too is whether or not this is going to be a Tony Stark variant. Is that going to be the case? Now, when Joe Russo introduced the character, he said, we need the greatest actor in the world who can play Victor Von Doom. The tweet, all of the social media, everything has said Victor Von Doom. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it still couldn't be a variant of Tony Stark. What would you say to that? Do you think it's just flat out Victor Von Doom, no Tony Stark relationship or variant whatsoever? Or do you think they are going to lean into the fact that, hey guys, we have the same exact actor coming to play this totally different role? Maybe in some parallel universe, Tony Stark broke bad. Maybe something happened. Maybe he changed his name. Maybe he got adopted. I mean, there's a million things you can do, and he can take on the mantle and the identity of Victor Von Doom. But do you think they're going to go that way, or are we just going to do straight-laced Victor Von Doom? He just so happens to look like Tony Stark in Earth 616 on the Sacred Timeline.
So kind of starting at the end a little bit, one of the cool things about them using RDJ is like getting some Avengers and being like, wait a second, we know who the hell that is. You know what I'm saying? And it like breaks their hearts that this dude is villain. You know, I think that's a very important thing to call out, because that could be effective in a film if they do that correctly. Like I could imagine Spider-Man pulls up and goes, wait a second, Mr. Stark.
That's gonna
like,
be that's gonna be gut wrenching to see him have to confront that. That's gonna be crazy.
Gut wrenching. But I think there's one or two ways to go here. One, comic wise, there's an alternate version of Tony Stark that mind melds with Dr. Doom. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll go that direction because it sounds ridiculous and kind of crazy, but very comic booky, and that can happen. The second option, which I think, I mean, this is the way to do it to me. There is a Dr. Doom, a Victor Von Doom specifically, who is the Tony Stark of his timeline. I think that timeline is the Fantastic Four version that we're going to get for sure. And I think it just going to so happens that he looks like Tony Stark. Because we have gotten, what's so interesting about, I think, the multiverse is there are at least still versions of themselves. Like even in, I don't know, Loki, they're still Lokis.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that, you're Loki. But maybe he is so different. Tony Stark, and specifically this person, this being, maybe Anchor being, who knows, whatever, is so different that he's a Victor Von Doom in another timeline. He's still smart. He still got the gadgets. He still has all these things, but his name is Victor Von Doom. And then he goes bad. I think that's it. And then eventually we get into the timeline stuff. The Avengers see him and they're like, what the hell? What is this? He's like, I'm not Tony Stark. I'm Victor Von Doom. I don't know what the hell y'all talking about. I definitely think that's what's going to happen. Shoot. We could, I definitely think it's going to happen, man. And also, as a weird side note, they could actually use the Void as Battle World, but that's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
They could.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's definitely a possibility. I think, I think that's probably the most reasonable early guess. I mean, there's a lot of different directions you can go. The mind melding consciousness whole thing that feels a little crazy and convoluted. They probably wouldn't do that. But from an emotional stake standpoint, to just have a different universe's Victor Von Doom essentially go down a very similar path as what Tony did in the Sacred Timeline, but ultimately, I mean, he takes the other turn. He just goes down a different road. Exactly. Could say a lot about the character, because Victor Von Doom is really complex. A lot of shades to him. Has been anti-hero adjacent at some points. We've seen how the personality of Victor Von Doom has gotten the best of him. The ego, the jealousy is a big factor. By the way, as I put out in my social video, Oppenheimer is a clear indicator as to why this could actually be perfect, because Louis Strauss in that movie is just obscenely jealous of Robert J. Oppenheimer, and Victor Von Doom has just been obscenely jealous of Reed Richards. That drives a lot of his hate. And so yeah, that could just be that could be his motivating factor to ultimately want to be this evil being. But obviously he won't think he's evil. He's gonna think he's doing good stuff. But I think it could be interesting. It's gonna be hard, but I think in addition to the characters themselves also having this really emotive, visceral reaction to seeing a guy that looks just like somebody they fought alongside,
Hmm.
us as an audience, like,
Yeah.
wow, we have to watch Robert Downey Jr. do like really evil shit with the context of
Hmm.
10, 11 years of him doing really great shit and sacrificing
Yeah.
himself and making the ultimate sacrifice. And now we actually have to watch this. It's really, it gets kind of complex when you think about it that way, because now you have to, one, suspend your disbelief and buy into the idea itself. But then
Hmm.
secondly, there's always that lingering thought and the lingering emotions and connections that we have with these movies. Like, yo, what am I watching right now? He's doing some really crazy stuff. But the same actor was also somebody that I admired and that I loved. I think that's going to just be like
Hmm.
an emotional play on the audience, something that we haven't really
Yeah.
experienced before. I don't know if this ever has precedence, something like this. Like
I don't think so.
it's really unique in that idea. And so yeah, I think that they have a chance to do something pretty unique and maybe even spectacular. Um, Kang the Conqueror. There was nothing
Oof.
said about him. Effectively, his movie got replaced and taken off the board. We already know Jonathan Majors won't be portraying the character. They let him go after the verdict came out. Is this just the end for the character? Are we not going to get any resolution? I know a lot of people are saying like, "Hey, I'm okay with this, but I still want
Hmm.
something. I still want something with Kang. I still want like put a bow on that story, do something to just like close that book." But I don't even know if they're going to do that at this point. Are they just going to completely
Hmm.
shift away from Kang and pretty much never revisit him, or is there maybe a chance that he factors into something somewhere in the future?
You know, Loki put a bow on it. Loki was like, let's literally we could kind of throw this out the window if we really want to. And they kind of did. I think in a way, what makes me sad about Kang, and at the same time us having to get to Doom so fast, is for me, Kang, if you know Kang, he is like the perfect villain for the Avengers as a team. Like just the way he operates and he moves, the Avengers are like, this dude is absolutely ridiculous. What make Victor Von Doom so damn cool is it wasn't just the Avengers, and I think that's what's hurting me a little bit. Is I
Mm,
know I'm not gonna see Victor Von Doom kill the X-Men. Like that's like the shit that like made him who he is. You know what I'm saying? When you see Victor Von Doom stepping over the body of like some of your favorite X-Men and Fantastic Four and Avengers and all these groups, is like, oh yeah, this dude is crazy. That makes that part is what makes me sad, because Kang is like, no, you were a great Avengers villain. You would have been exceptional. And I feel like we needed him as that time, as like that bookmark to get to the mutants, so we could get to Doom right after we have mutants in Fantastic Four. But with that being said, I think it has to be the end. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, Kang, again, we just talked about it. Kang feels like this is it, unless we make him part of the reboot. Unless, you know what I'm saying, unless Doom is over and everything is done and we're like, okay, let's revisit Kang. Some new things have come up. Maybe we recast it. Maybe Jonathan Majors even comes back. Like, I don't know. But maybe like, yeah, I know. But maybe dust
I'm sorry,
settles.
that was immature.
You no, it was really funny though. No, it was really funny though. But maybe they say let's bring Kang back and everything looks different. Maybe he's just in a whole new MCU. You know what I'm saying? And so because they haven't used him as the big bad.
Mm-mm.
They've used him in Ant-Man,
He faced off
and
against ants. That's the extent of
he
what he's pretty
got
much
beat.
done. And we saw Frederick,
That's your
and we
legacy,
saw Frederick
bro.
Douglass. So yeah.
This legit. This is legit one of the biggest comic book villains like of all time, and that's it. Like you just you just got beat by ants,
Damn,
and that's
man.
the end of your story, man. And then Loki, kind of like you said, we seen Frederick Douglass, and they closed the book on Frederick Douglass. They were like, well, maybe he's not evil anymore. So like that's it, man. I don't really know. I think this is the end for Kang. I can't see a world where he comes back, at least in this MCU. Maybe in a future rebooty thing, but right now I think this is the end for him.
Yeah, I think it's over. They want to take. You don't do this if you don't intend to take complete attention away from that to refocus on Robert Downey Jr. And what better person to use to take your attention away from something than your biggest possible actor. And so
Yeah.
that even just that if they just cast like a random guy, then I probably would feel differently. But the fact that it is RDJ, it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is like dead and buried. Like that is completely just we're out of here with Kang, and we don't have any intentions on going back to that. I know you spoke a lot about apprehensions and concerns, but do you think that this might be a blessing in disguise? Like the fact that let's just pretend maybe that this is the end of it all. Maybe everything afterwards is a soft reboot and we're kind of starting
Mm-hmm.
over. Is that potentially a blessing in disguise, just considering where the MCU has been lately? Like it hasn't been that great. You know, it's been somewhat
Mm-hmm.
subpar over the past few years. Maybe we should probably get out while the getting's good. And we shouldn't
Yeah.
stretch this out past, the next couple of years. And this just might be the best moment. All the people that we need are back at the table. RDJ is going to do this one more time. We got the Russo brothers coming back one more time. Who else
Mm-hmm.
might come back, while they're still able to do so? Jeremy Renner, Scarlett Johansson, Chris Hemsworth, whoever else, like all the people available. Maybe this is like the best possible outcome, just considering where we are. Would you say that that's a reasonable thing to think, or would you still feel that it's just all happening a little too quickly?
I think it's possible for it to be that way. I think the proof will still be in the pudding when these movies come out. We'll figure it out. I think what will be kind of frustrating a little bit is after going through this not so great phase. Imagine like next year is fire, and imagine these two Avengers movies are fire, and then we're like, but maybe we could have kept going. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like we finally got out of it and we're like reboot, but it's also a little bit part of me would have been like, okay, but what if we did kind of keep going? What if we finally found the footing that we were supposed to have? So yeah, I think it really would just depend on what it looks like and how we feel after next year and the year after happens, specifically after Doomsday, depending on how we feel, for sure. But I definitely think this potential that this could have been a blessing in disguise, and that like you said, we got to get out when the going is good. I think there's definitely room for that too, but I think to be sure, we got to see what happens these next couple years.
So this is going to cost Marvel a fucking fortune. There are already reports out there about how much these guys are getting paid. That was one of the first conversations I had when I heard this news. I was in several group chats and people were just like, "Oh my god, how much money did they plunk down for this?" Well, Variety published a report and they have sources that say Marvel is going to pay the Russo brothers $80 million to direct Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, and that Robert Downey Jr. is going to make significantly more than that to come and play Doctor Doom. In fact, again, as I mentioned earlier, a report from Jeff Snyder actually puts a finite number on that figure. He reports that Robert Downey Jr. is going to make $50 million upfront per movie, with the chance to possibly double that based on certain box office incentives. The Russo's deal doesn't include back-end compensation, but it does contain performance escalators that kick in at the $750 million and $1 billion thresholds at the box office. The brothers also plan to produce the two films via their Agbo banner, which is something of a departure from Marvel. They typically do all of their production work in-house. They prefer
That's
to keep
true.
things in-house. They don't typically have outside production houses come in and do their projects. But then also for Robert Downey Jr., his deal is filled with a bunch of perks that include a private jet, detailed security, and a
Mm,
whole trailer encampment for the newly minted
mm,
Oscar winner. And according to one knowledgeable source, Downey is by far the highest paid member of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and has pulled down between $500 million and $600 million over the course of 4 Avengers movies, 3 Iron Man outings, and cameos in The Incredible Hulk, Captain America Civil War, and Spider-Man Homecoming. It's Patrick Mahomes' numbers right there.
okay,
What
Jordan Love now.
what do you think about this investment? I'm gonna call it an investment because that's what it
It's
is.
definitely an investment.
there is a plan to return this, but
Mhm.
we haven't talked about not a single other cast member, and already these guys are making just so much money, a ridiculous amount of money to come back and do this, which we suspected. I mean, you don't get RDJ back and think he's going to
Yeah.
make pennies. Also, Jeff Snyder reported that his upfront pay was $20 million for Avengers Endgame, but he ended up walking away with $75 million based on back end deals. Now we're talking
Mm.
$50 million upfront. who knows what he's worked out on the back end. The movies are going to make a lot of money. I mean, I don't even know how to comprehend this, but these might be legitimately billion-dollar movies in terms of how much they cost. Not even in terms of how much they make. They actually might cost $1 billion to make because you got to pay everybody else. And there's those rumors out there that there might be 60, 65 cast members, and I'm sure they're going to have stars be a part of those casts. Like, I mean, what do you even think about this? Just the massive amount of money that's going to be spent on these movies, but also the potential upside, because we have said numerous times, like, I mean, if you're going to spend a lot of money, you know that you ultimately have to make a lot of money, but that puts a lot of pressure on your movie to not only be good, but for people to think it's good and to show up over and over and over again.
Wow. So much money. Yeah. I like you said, I can't comprehend it. I can barely even speak about what this means in terms of how much money they're spending, man. It actually kind of blows my mind. But they are Disney and they got it. You know what I'm saying? They got it. They pockets is deep. I will say that. And I really do think the return on investment, I mean, it's not like it's an experiment anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we don't have Infinity War and Endgame, shoot, or Avengers 2012 for that matter. Like, it's not like we don't have these films and they haven't been proven. And it's not like they haven't only upped the stakes in a lot of ways by bringing RDJ back, by bringing the Russos back, by doing all these things. I think the return on investment is going to happen. I definitely think butts will be in seats. This is going to be a whole cinematic phenomenon. It's going to be insane. There's going to be theaters sold out months ahead of time. It's just going to be nuts. It's going to be pandemonium, balls to the wall. I definitely think that's going to happen. We talk about theme parks and all of those things. Can you imagine, like, I'm just thinking about them being able to use Doom and stuff. Like, just the idea of them being able to use Doom all over the place. And all the comic book nerds love Doom. Like, Doom is really him. And so, like, you're gonna be able to use Doom shoot in new cartoons. Doom might pop up in What If. Doom might pop, like, it's gonna be really interesting, I think, to see all of that stuff come full circle and come to fruition. Just because of this movie is happening in general. And so I definitely think they're gonna get their money back. But holy crap, that's a lot of money to have to pay everybody. Oh my God. The visual effects team by itself is about to be like 500 deep. Like, it's going to be so many people working on this movie too. Like, we were just talking about the actors, the amount of visual effects artists and costume. If there's 60 people, you need 60 costumes.
And maybe, maybe variations of all of those 60 people if it's going to be Secret War.
So. Maybe variations. And some of them might not even be in costume. Some of them might have to change. You know what I'm saying? You might need a t-shirt and jeans for some of these people. Like, it's going to be nuts. Makeup for all of those people, nuts. Like, trailers, food on set. It's going to be actually insane how much they have to do to get this movie across the finish line. And once again, we have to reiterate this, by 2026. What? Just absolutely crazy. So yeah, I really can't even imagine what's going to happen, but I just hope we see the movie or the money on the screen. Like, make it look good. Take care of your baby. And I think that's what they're doing for sure. That's what they have to do, but take care of your baby, man.
Yeah, this is this is their Super Bowl, and I put it in my Instagram stories. Championship rings don't come cheap. At the end of the day, you got to spend money if you want to win the Super Bowl, if you want to win the World Series, whatever the case may be. You got to spend big. And typically when we hear about budgets and we talk about budgets and how much movies cost, I'm like, oh my God, that is a ridiculous amount of money. That is just super over the line. But this is the rare case where it's like, yeah, we kind of can justify it just based on that previous history, knowing what RDJ has done, knowing what he's capable of. I mean, as I said earlier, look at the damn Instagram video, 287 million views on an Instagram video, on a reel. That alone tells you what the interest level for this movie is going to be just based on an announcement. We haven't seen shit. Yeah. We haven't seen a trailer, a photo, nothing. We don't know the story.
It's RDJ like this.
It's literally him standing there like Jesus Christ. And that is what has gotten everybody talking. So you already have an indicator to say like, oh, yeah, y'all, this is going to work. we're gonna make so much fucking money, and that's obviously what Disney wants to do. Plus, as I like to say, and I said it with Deadpool and Wolverine, they have the best marketing team in the world who
Yeah.
have access to everything. And Doomsday, as they said in their social media posts, starring Robert Downey Jr. That man
Oh,
is the
we
star of
need
the
an
movie.
Oppenheimer clock.
Oh my
We
God.
need an Oppenheimer
We
clock.
should count
Doomsday,
down.
come
We
on.
should count
We need an
down.
Oppenheimer
We
clock.
should
We
count
need
down.
it.
Doomsday is it's on right now. Like the
It's
countdown is
on.
literally on. And I'm pretty sure the script is pretty much like ready to almost be be done and go because they have to start
Hmm.
shooting early next year. So yeah, it's right around the corner. It's crazy stuff, but man, we talked a lot about that. But there were other quick things that I just wanted to run through quickly. I mean, even with the other three movies, not a ton of stuff that we didn't really know, but a couple of new things. In particular, the Fantastic Four has a new title now. Now it's going to be called the Fantastic Four First Steps. How do you feel about that? Do you like that? Do you dislike it? Do you think it's good, bad? How are you feeling about the title?
Uh, eh. Like, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel. I don't think first steps. Part of me just wishes they kept the Fantastic Four.
I do too.
Like I didn't need a tagline here. This isn't a sequel, nor is it like, yeah. I don't think I just needed a tagline, so I feel mad about it. I don't think they needed it.
It sounds like a Rugrats cartoon. First Steps.
Yeah.
So they're going to begin production on this movie today as we're recording this. They started in London. Matt Shagman came out. Obviously, the whole cast: Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss Baccarat. They basically confirm what we have already talked about. They're doing a retro, futuristic '60s in a different universe, so it won't be Earth 616, not the Sacred Timeline. Matt Shagman said that industrialist Sid Mead was a big inspiration. The 60s is all about optimism. And he loves the Fantastic Four. He's really, really honing in on the power set and wanting to get that right and wanting to be true to the comics. And then they had a fantastic car soar over the crowd, which is like a really, really cool thing that they did. It was like a drone effect, but they I guess we'll have the Fantastic Car. They of course showed some pre-shot footage that they did. They hadn't officially started filming, but they
Mhm.
had rehearsals and did some test shoots, and they showed that to the audience. But we obviously did not see that. But any other thoughts on Fantastic Four and just like where things are heading as we start to get ready for that movie to come out next year?
I love Marvel. I think kind of forcing themselves into something artistic that it's 60s futurism. Like I love that they have to be artsy. Like I love that they're forced to kind of be artsy here. I think that's really cool because it's something they don't get to do. Like we always talk about how these movies look, and like I think part of it's because they're never forced to do anything like this. They're never forced to do 60s retro. Like that's cool. And so they have to do different production designs. They have to make it look different. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for that aspect of the movie, just to feel like I'm imagining like the Jetsons, you know what I'm saying? Like here's George Jetson and then in comes Ben Grimm. It's just like what would happen? So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that.
It's definitely giving Jetsons, for sure. I think, yeah, this is really cool stuff. This is an opportunity to do something different, and it's perfect for the Fantastic Four as a property. I think
Hmm.
one of the challenges is the fact that they're somewhat similar to Superman. They're
Exactly.
really
I was
hard
thinking
to
the same
crack,
thing.
and they're really hard to crack in a
Hmm.
modern context. And so to lean into the sensibilities in which they were created, which was around the 60s, and thinking about optimism and space travel and possibilities and what's out there, discovery, those ideas and those
Hmm.
themes are really, really key, I think, to this particular group of people. Thunderbolts, they also brought out the cast there, the director, plus Lewis Pullman, Hannah John Kamen, Wyatt Russell was there, Julia Louis Dreyfus, Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, and David Harbour, who showed up in his Red Guardian costume. I know they showed some footage also in the hall that was not publicly released, but they kind of kept it brief and quick with this one. Thunderbolts still has this asterisk next to it. Which means something, obviously.
Yeah.
Kevin Feige has done, several interviews and basically said, like, yeah, you guys will find out relatively soon, probably within the next like year, as to why there's an asterisk there, like what that exactly means. I mean, it signals that they're going to change the title. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, what the real title might be, or what the asterisk might mean in general. But any thoughts on Thunderbolts and what they brought out here for Comic Con?
Man, it's really hard for me to even guess. Like this is like so cryptic. I think it's just a, I think it's just a hidden twist, maybe like in the movie itself, per se. Even like something we just didn't expect. Like maybe I don't know. Maybe this is the, like you said, these people are going to be in Avengers. Maybe something happens. It's like Thunderbolts in the Avengers, or Thunderbolts in something else, or Thunderbolts and the Young Avengers. I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's something there. I really don't know. It's hard for me to guess, to be honest.
I'm prejudging. My prejudging is popping out big time, but I'm just gonna say I really don't like when they do stuff like this, like
Mhm.
these stunts with like titles, like the whole Agatha deal, like what they did there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Whack, lame. Like I just tell us the title. Like what the fuck is the big deal about it? I don't understand. I'm getting kind of peeved by it, but I think when they switch it, it's probably going to be Dark Avengers. Maybe if they switch it to something like Dark Avengers,
Mm.
and that's why they're going to be so important, I guess, to Avengers,
Mhm.
Doomsday, and Secret Wars, because
Or,
this is
or maybe even West Coast. They're the new West Coast
they got to
Avengers.
add some more people if we're doing West Coast. I need Ant-Man. I need Vision. Where's Vision? You got to bring him back. West Coast would be mighty
That's just
crazy
funny.
to just throw
It
in
would be so
there.
crazy.
Yeah.
They're not gonna do that. I just thought it was
But
funny.
we should get West Coast Avengers soon. Like I want to see West Coast
Yeah, we should.
Avengers. As goofy as it might be, I'm kind of here for that. And then
Mhm.
last but not least, Captain America: Brave New World, which is the next movie that we're going to be getting. Valentine's Day 2025. Nothing really new here because we already saw the trailer a couple of weeks ago. But the big thing that we did find out is who Giancarlo Esposito is playing. He's going to be playing Sidewinder, the king of the Serpent Society. I wonder how many people had to search Sidewinder after he confirmed this news. He was not lying. Nobody fucking guessed this. I mean, we
I know I didn't.
nobody
I
guessed
know
this.
I didn't.
He
Sidewinder.
was not playing coy at all. Literally nobody theorized that he was going to be playing Sidewinder.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, I don't know, any extra thoughts on, this role, this reveal, and what he might bring to the movie, or just Captain America: Brave New World in general.
Dang, Giancarlo is supposed to be doomed, man. Why are we doing this? No, I just did not expect Sidewinder. But no, nothing new on Captain America really. I do think they're repping up that movie pretty decent now. Also, I have to say, Harrison Ford's press run is hilarious. He does not want to be here.
Oh no,
He is here
N-
for the
not at
paychecks.
all.
Like
Yeah.
he's over all of it. He's barely answering any of the questions. It's just really funny, I think, to see him also in his grandpa stage. You know what I'm saying? Where he's just like, I'm here for the paycheck. Y'all asking me too many questions. Get out of here. So yeah, not too much to say about Captain America though.
He's like, I'm in my 80s and you're asking me about pythons and Indiana Jones and snakes. Like, shut up. Who cares, But yeah, Harrison Ford,
Mhm.
obviously a treasure, and I can't wait to see him in the movie and ultimately what they do here. But yeah, Sidewinder, cool, bro, cool. They've just shot
Good for you.
they've just shot the movie so many times. I don't even know what this movie is supposed to be anymore. And so just kind of waiting eagerly to see how they set things up and how it might, I think reintroduce the idea of Captain America to us, and what that might mean for the Sam Wilson character. But certainly we'll be waiting in anticipation for Captain America: Brave New World. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the Marvel Hall H San Diego Comic-Con panel. If you have any thoughts on the things that were announced, if you have thoughts on Robert Downey Jr. returning as Dr. Doom, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.